Chapter 1, the moment that split my life in two. Calm, slightly tense, reflective at first, then shock and disbelief. I came home later than usual that night. The hallway smelled the same as always, cold dust, old paint, someone's distant cooking. Yet something in the air felt wrong, heavier, thicker, as if the walls already knew something I didn't. When I opened the door to our apartment, I saw Olena on the couch, not reading, not watching anything, just sitting there with a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. Her back was straight, but her shoulders trembled with each careful breath. Her eyes lifted toward me, wide, hollow, rimmed with exhaustion. "Purr, whisper. Hey," I said softly, trying to sound normal. "Why aren't you asleep?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. It wasn't the silence of someone searching for a word. It was the silence of someone standing on the edge of a cliff. Then she whispered, "Andriy, we need to talk." That sentence, that one, had never in my life brought good news. I put my bag down slowly and sat across from her. Her fingers were wrapped around the mug so tightly that her knuckles looked white in the dim kitchen light. She closed her eyes, exhaled, and said the words that sliced my world in half in one effortless motion. Torn, barely audible, trembling. 2 weeks ago, I was with someone else. The breath, the clock on the kitchen wall ticked once, just once, but it felt like the sound traveled straight through my skull. I didn't remember standing up, but suddenly I was on my feet, not pacing out of anger, pacing because standing still felt impossible. I felt like the floor might give way, like the air might tear open. I needed motion, otherwise I would break. Olena didn't follow me with her eyes. She stared at her hands as though they were stained. Tone low, controlled, holding back emotion. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Andriy. I should have told you earlier. I stopped her with a raised hand. Not sharply, just because I couldn't hear more. Not yet." Tone hollow, questioning. "Why now?" I asked. Slow, dull, almost quiet. "Why tell me tonight? Why tell me at all?" She swallowed hard. "Because I love you, and I can't live with this lie." Her words hit me harder than anything else. Because I love you. It felt like being stabbed in the same place twice. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just felt emptied, as if someone had scooped out every emotion and left only the echo of what had been there before. Tone, quiet, heavy, reflective. "I need to think," I said at last. "I need space." I grabbed my jacket and keys. Olena didn't move toward me. She didn't beg, she just nodded with that silent, devastated acceptance I had never seen on her face before. I walked out the door, and when it clicked shut behind me, the silence in the corridor felt like a physical thing. Cold, metallic, whispering at my spine. It was the first night in my life I feared going back home. Tone, weary, reflective, gradually tense. The next morning I woke up on Mitro's couch with a headache that felt like it had been waiting for me. His apartment smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Familiar and comforting, but nothing could touch the emptiness gnawing at my chest. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of the radiator, made my skin crawl. Silence had been stolen from me, replaced with the whisper of memories I didn't want to confront. Dimitro came into the room with 2 mugs of coffee. He set one down without looking at me. "Sleep okay?" he asked casually, though I could see the concern behind his calm eyes. "No," I muttered. The word sounded too small for the storm inside me. He sat opposite, legs crossed, stirring his coffee slowly. "You don't have to talk. Not yet." I stared at the steam curling above my mug. Every movement in that small apartment felt magnified, deliberate, heavy. I kept thinking of her on the couch, her hands trembling around that other cup. 2 weeks ago, the image refused to leave me. Dull, reflective. "Do you forgive her?" Dimitro asked softly, though it was a question meant more for me than for him. I laughed, a short, hollow sound. I don't even know if I can think straight anymore. Forgiveness, what does that even mean when trust is gone? He didn't answer. He just leaned back, letting me stew in my own silence. And silence, I realized, had become my worst enemy. It made me replay every moment of her life with him, or what I imagined, until I could hardly remember the person I was before. Days passed, or maybe hours. Time didn't exist anymore, only the loop of thoughts and shadows. I wandered the city streets, walking past couples laughing, families holding hands, strangers who didn't know how much their happiness hurt me. The taste of food had disappeared. Even coffee was bitter in my mouth. Sleep was fractured. My dreams became miniature trials where Olena stood across from me, her gaze accusing, forgiving, and sad all at once. And in those dreams I shouted, cried, fell, and woke alone. Dmytro would check in. Sometimes we didn't speak at all. He just made me breakfast, poured coffee, or left a note. You'll find your answer. I hated him for his patience, yet I needed him. His presence was the only thread holding me above the abyss. One night I found myself pacing his living room, staring at the wall where a painting of a calm river hung. The river was supposed to be tranquil, but all I saw was turbulence, something churning beneath the surface that I couldn't stop. Tone tentative, reflective. I can't do this alone, I finally admitted aloud. My voice surprised me. It sounded small, fragile, but it was the first truth I had allowed myself in days. Dmytro didn't say anything. He just nodded. That nod was enough to know he understood. Not because he had lived it, but because he had witnessed it. The slow unraveling of a man torn between love, betrayal, and the unbearable need to survive his own mind. And in that moment I realized the real danger wasn't what she had done. It was what I might do to myself. What I might lose if I stayed trapped in my thoughts. I had to go back. I had to face her. I had to confront the silence and the storm it had left behind. I stepped back into the apartment, and it was as if the walls themselves were watching me. The familiar space now felt foreign, as though it had shifted while I was away. The couch where Olena had confessed was still there, the same faded fabric, yet somehow larger, colder. The air smelled faintly of tea, stale, lingering, a reminder of the night that had split our lives in two. Olena appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, careful not to make a sound. Her eyes flickered up at me, and for a moment I thought I saw fear there. Or was it just my imagination? I had become a stranger to myself, tone soft, tentative. I didn't expect you back so soon, she said, her voice tight, almost rehearsed. I need to see this. Us, I replied. The words felt hollow even as I spoke them. We moved through the apartment like ghosts, each step weighted. She set down a cup of tea for me, and I noticed how the rim wobbled slightly, a small imperfection. But in that moment it felt monumental. Every noise, every flicker of light, every hum from the refrigerator became amplified in my senses. The apartment was alive in a way it never had been, alive with tension, with suspicion, with the memory of her words. Tone, reflective, internal, I caught myself staring at her hands, remembering how they had trembled around that other cup. 2 weeks ago, she noticed my gaze and looked away, pulling the sleeves of her sweater down over her wrists. We sat at the table. Neither of us spoke for what felt like an eternity. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was a thick, suffocating presence pressing down on us. I noticed the way she breathed, shallow and careful, as if any deep inhalation might shatter the fragile balance we were trying to hold. "You're quiet," she said finally. "I'm trying to listen," I replied, and for once I wasn't speaking about her. I was speaking about myself, the storm inside me that had become a second presence in the apartment. We ate in silence, the clinking of forks on plates echoing like distant gunshots. I wanted to speak, to scream, to ask her questions that had no answers. But every word felt wrong. Every movement threatened to tip the balance. Later, I wandered from room to room, touching objects, seeing them for the first time in a different light. The photographs on the wall, our shared memories, suddenly felt like evidence from a life that had belonged to someone else. The apartment didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a witness. And then came the evening. The lights dimmed low. Shadows stretched along the walls, and I realized I had been holding my breath all day. I exhaled slowly, the first sound I had made in hours, and she looked up at me. In soft, cautious hope. "I don't want to force you," she whispered. "I just want to exist here, with you, if that's possible." I sat down across from her, letting the words sink in. Yes, it was possible, but it would take work. Painful, deliberate work. I wasn't sure if I was ready, if either of us were. Yet something in me softened. Maybe it was the way she didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't beg, didn't cry, not anymore. Maybe it was the quiet honesty between us, the fragile truce of shared fear and love. The home looked different that night. Not safer, not happier, but alive, watching us, waiting, and perhaps forgiving. The days that followed were a quiet war. Olena and I shared the same apartment, same bed, the same air, and yet it felt as if we were divided by a canyon wide enough to swallow both of us whole. Every glance, every sigh, every pause in conversation seemed loaded with unspoken questions I didn't want to ask, and answers I wasn't sure I could bear. We ate together, but rarely spoke. She moved carefully around the apartment, as if her every gesture might break the fragile calm. I noticed how she didn't reach for my hand, how her eyes darted away whenever mine lingered too long, and yet there was a quiet presence about her, a patience that I could neither accept nor reject. Tone, haunted, reflective. Some nights I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying her confession. I didn't feel rage, not exactly. I felt something heavier, a persistent, gnawing anxiety, a fear that every smile she gave me was tinged with guilt, that every word I heard was filtered through betrayal. I was not jealous, I was terrified, terrified of loving someone who had hurt me, terrified of living with the memory, terrified of losing myself entirely in suspicion. Dmytro called one evening, tone gentle, caring. "You're doing too much thinking alone," he said. "Come by tomorrow. Let me remind you what it feels like to breathe without twisting yourself into knots." I laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I don't know if I can leave her right now, or if I want to." "You need perspective," he said. "Sometimes you're too close to the storm to see the sky." Tone, tense, heavy reflection. He was right. I was trapped in my own mind, living in a space where every object, every shadow, every faint sound became evidence. A creak in the floorboards, the faint rustle of a curtain, even her breathing, all of it seemed magnified, threatening. And Olena knew it. She moved around carefully, aware of my inner disquiet. But she didn't try to fill the silences with excuses or tears. She simply existed, a presence that was both comforting and unbearable. One evening she lit a candle and placed it between us on the table. The flickering light cast shadows that danced along her face. I watched her, trying to see the person I loved, not the woman who had betrayed me. Soft, tentative. "You're thinking about it again?" she said softly. Almost a statement, not a question. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was there, unspoken, lodged in the air between us like a knife. "I know this is hard," she continued. "I can't undo it. I don't want to push you. I just want to be here. With you, if you let me." Her honesty cut sharper than her betrayal. It forced me to confront what I truly felt. My love for her, tangled with fear, anger, and longing. I wanted to reach for her hand, to close the distance, but I hesitated. The chasm between us was not just physical, it was made of doubts, memories, and unspoken pain. I realized in that moment that the hardest part wasn't forgiving her. It was learning to trust the life we had together again, even when every shadow seemed to whisper the past. Dmytro's words came back to me, "You either forgive or you become your own prison." I didn't know if I was ready, but for the first time, I understood what I had to do. I sat back, letting the candlelight fall across my hands. and for the first time in weeks I felt the faintest stir of hope. The nights were the worst. Alone in the darkness or lying next to Olena while she slept, my mind became a courtroom where I was both judge and defendant, prosecutor and jury. Every memory, every detail, every imagined conversation with Mark replayed endlessly. I interrogated myself. Did I miss the signs? Did I miss the signs? Did I fail her? Could I have stopped it? I began to see patterns where none existed. A glance, a pause, a word spoken in the wrong tone, all transformed into evidence of betrayal. And yet, even as I spiraled, I knew some part of me clung stubbornly to the woman I loved. I could not, would not, abandon her completely. Dmitro called one evening. Tone, gentle, calm. I can't stop thinking about it, I admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see her with him. And I can't forgive myself for feeling like this. Then you're thinking in circles, he said. You're stuck in the trial of your own mind. Step back. Observe without judgment. Let her exist without replaying the past every second. I wanted to yell at him, to scream that it wasn't simple. That betrayal was a fire that consumed everything it touched. But part of me listened. Slowly, painfully, I realized he was right. I had been torturing myself more than anyone else. During the day, I tried small exercises, noticing her presence without judgment, listening to her voice without recalling his name, touching her hand and not thinking about what it represented. Each attempt felt like climbing a steep cliff. Every small victory was exhausting, but I kept going. One evening, Olena brought a cup of tea to the living room. We sat together silently. The quiet wasn't suffocating this time. It was tentative, a bridge being rebuilt plank by plank. Tone soft, tentative hope. You're trying, she said. I nodded. I'm scared, but I want to try. Her hand found mine. For a moment, it was light, warm, a simple human connection. And yet I felt the weight of weeks, months, maybe years pressing down. The past was still there, a shadow in the room, but it was no longer a chain. It was a reminder that we could move forward carefully, deliberately. Later, alone in my room, I wrote in my notebook, Soft, I am not ready to forgive completely. I am not ready to forget, but I am ready to live with her again. It was the first honest sentence I had written since the confession. The first sentence that wasn't soaked in pain or fear. And for the first time, I believed that maybe, just maybe, love could survive this. The next evening, I asked Olena to sit with me in the living room. Not on the couch, not at the table. Just in the center of the room where we could see each other clearly. Serve pause. I think we need to talk, I said quietly. She nodded, sitting down carefully, her hands folded in her lap. There was no anger in her eyes now, only fragile honesty. She had accepted her guilt, but she hadn't asked for forgiveness. That was both terrifying and strangely comforting. I don't know where to start, I admitted. I can't stop replaying it. Everything you did, everything I didn't see. Every moment before, I keep asking myself, was it me? Was I enough? Olena's eyes glistened, but she stayed silent, letting me speak. For the first time, I realized that this silence wasn't empty. It was space to hear each other, to confront the truth without noise. Not by being with him, but by letting it happen. By not telling you, by letting you live in a lie. I can't take it back. I can only tell you the truth now, even if it hurts. The words hung in the air, sharp and painful, yet carrying a strange relief. The hidden secret, finally revealed, had left a wound, but at least it was open, exposed to light. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I had loved for years was sitting across from me, not defending herself, not justifying, just existing in the raw honesty of her mistake. Tone tentative, questioning. Do you love me? I asked, my voice almost breaking. I do, she whispered. I've always loved you. That didn't stop me from making a terrible mistake, but I love you. I felt something loosen inside me. Not everything, not yet. But a thread of hope, fragile and trembling, began to pull me toward her. We talked for hours, not in shouting matches, not in recriminations, but with careful words, pauses, and truths laid bare. I admitted my fear of never trusting again. She admitted her shame and regret. We cried. We held hands, and for the first time since the confession, we were honest without blame, honest without pretense. By the end, the apartment felt different. Not healed, not perfect, but real. Solid. A place where we could begin to rebuild something together, even if it was fragile and uncertain. And soft, hopeful. That night I lay awake next to her, listening to her slow, steady breathing. I felt the weight of the past pressing lightly against my chest, but for the first time it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a shadow that would always be there. A reminder, but one I could live with. The days that followed our long conversation were quiet, almost painfully so. The apartment felt alive again, but in a fragile, tentative way. Every glance we shared, every unspoken word, carried a weight I could not yet measure. I knew that the past would always linger between us, a shadow neither of us could erase. Dmytro visited that evening. I hadn't asked him to come, yet somehow he knew. We sat in the small kitchen, coffee in hand, silence stretching comfortably between us. "You're thinking about leaving," he said finally. Not as a question, but as a statement. I stared into my cup. I don't know if I can stay, or if I should. "You're terrified of pain," he said simply. "But staying doesn't mean you won't feel it. It means you're willing to face it, to move forward anyway. That's what love looks like sometimes. Not forgetting, not pretending, but choosing anyway." I closed my eyes. His words struck deeper than anything else anyone had said. I had been trapped in a loop of guilt, fear, and doubt, endlessly weighing what was lost against what could be rebuilt. And yet here was the truth, plain and unvarnished. Life would always carry pain. The question was whether I wanted to carry it alone or together. Later that night, I walked through the apartment. Olena was sitting on the couch, reading, the soft lamplight casting a warm glow across her face. She looked up at me and smiled, small, tentative but genuine. I walked to her and sat down beside her. Our knees touched. I felt the tremor of uncertainty still coursing through me, but also a spark of something stronger. Hope, fragile but real. "I've decided," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not leaving. Not because it's easy. Not because the past doesn't matter, but because I want to try, with you, even if it's hard." Her eyes glistened. She didn't reach for me immediately, didn't make promises. She simply nodded, and I felt her hand brush mine. The contact was simple, yet it carried a weight heavier than words. I realized then that this was what living with the aftermath felt like, choosing each day over and over to trust someone, to rebuild what had been broken, to allow love to exist alongside its own scars. Dmytro's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes you grow something new on the ruins of what was destroyed. I had chosen to grow, and Olena had chosen to grow with me. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't simple, it wasn't free of pain, but it was ours. That night, I lay in bed beside her, her breathing slow and steady. I felt the weight of the past pressing lightly against me, but for the first time it didn't feel unbearable. It was a shadow I could live with. I whispered to the darkness, "We survived. We'll survive again." And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. The first light of dawn filtered softly through the curtains, painting the apartment in pale gold. I lay awake for a long time, listening to Olena's steady breathing beside me, and felt a strange mixture of relief and lingering ache. The betrayal had not vanished, and the shadows of doubt would always remain somewhere in the corners of my mind, but they were no longer all-consuming. She stirred and turned slightly, her hand brushing against mine. I squeezed it gently, careful not to startle her. She murmured something in her sleep, a soft, contented sound that made the lump in my throat tighten with emotion. For the first time in weeks, the apartment felt like home again. Not perfect, not free of the past, but a place where we could exist together, quietly and honestly learning to trust each other again. I thought of Dmytro and his patient guidance, The words he had offered me like a lifeline when I had felt myself drowning in suspicion and fear. You either forgive, or you become your own prison. I had chosen to forgive, or at least to live with forgiveness as a process. I had chosen to step out of the prison of my mind and into a shared reality with her, fragile though it was. I rose quietly and went to the window, looking out at the city, waking beneath the soft morning light. There was a chill in the air, and yet it felt alive, full of possibility. I realized that this was what life would be from now on, a mixture of warmth and ache, hope and lingering shadows, trust rebuilt day by day. When I returned to the bedroom, Olena had opened her eyes. She smiled, that small, fragile, genuine smile. "Morning," she whispered. "Morning," I replied. And for the first time I felt that simple greeting carry the weight of survival, of endurance, of love that had been tested and had not broken. We lay there together, side by side, not speaking, not needing to. The past was there, like a faint echo in the room, but the present, the shared warmth, the quiet breaths, the tentative trust, was stronger. I knew it wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be perfect. But we had survived, and somehow that was enough. As the sun rose higher, casting light across the apartment, I whispered quietly to myself, "We survived, and we will continue together." The shadows remained, the memories lingered, but so did the light. And for now, that was everything.